Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Hawaii Board of Nursing. It is, I don't know what month it is. June?
It's June.
4th, I think. We're going to start with an informational video about attending virtual board meetings.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on as well as their video cameras.
Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The agenda contains information that you all heard just now about attending virtual board meetings, and I've been told by the executive officers, I don't have to read it. Yay! I'm so excited. It's all there, always and forever. As an FYI, we are also broadcasting on Olelo. So with that, I'm going to skip right ahead to taking roll and establishing a quorum. Woohoo! My name is Carrie O'Leary. I'm the chair. I am present. When I call your name, board members who are attending virtually, please indicate if you are present and alone in a non-public location. Bradley Kuo.
Present.
Joe Riggs.
Present.
Rebecca Moore.
Present alone.
Terrence Artani.
Present and alone.
Sherry Shields Hansen.
Present and alone.
We are missing Darren Dunbar, but we do have a quorum, so we will proceed with the meeting. We are now in order. Yay! Okay. First thing on the agenda item number 2 is the approval of the open and executive session minutes for the May 7th meeting of the Board of Nursing. Does any board member have any revisions, anything we need to discuss on the executive session? We can call, or executive session minutes, we can go into an executive session if you want to discuss any substantive changes.
This is Sherry. I have no substantive changes except my name is spelled different every time it's
I noticed
written.
that. I was going to say,
So,
revisions
if you
on
could
all
just
of
go
it.
through with cut and find, and that would be great with me.
I
Thank
noticed
you.
that same thing, Sherry.
I know my husband would love to say, I told you so. You should have had one name. But anyway, thank you.
Any other changes? All right, seeing no discussion on substantive changes, is there a motion to approve the minutes with the non-substantive typographical revisions suggested by Sherry Shields Hansen and the chair?
I'll move. Terrence.
Thank you, Terrence, for the motion. Is there a second?
Bradley, I'll second.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Bradley. Is any board member wish to discuss or any public member want to provide testimony on the agenda item? Seeing none, the motion carries. I'm sorry, does anybody wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? I didn't actually take a vote. Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, thank you very much for that. All right, the chair's report is agenda item number 3. I am so sad to say we are losing one of our board members. Today's our last meeting. Jill Riggs has been our vice chair for the last, I don't know how long. Thank you very much for your service. And so if I may, I would like to give you a lei. Thank you to the EOs for this. It's so pretty. I really appreciate your service on the board.
Thank you.
It has
It's
been a
pleasure.
delight to have you. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
What are you gonna do with yourself now? You're not here every Thursday morning.
So many other things.
So many things. I'm just gonna go sit on a beach with an umbrella.
I wish.
Hello, board member Darren. All right, well, thank you for your service. We definitely appreciate you. We will miss you very much. Thank you so much for your service as vice chair for these last 4 years. As a side note on that, we will be doing elections for president or chair and vice chair next meeting. So just bear that in mind for board members. Does anybody want to provide testimony on this agenda item? See how good I'm remembering?
Thank you, Julie, for public testimony.
Thank you, Julie. All right, we'll move on then to our next agenda item, which is the executive officer's report.
Yes. And we have one today. I want to flag that we have received multiple notifications from current and former nurses licensed in Hawaii that they were contacted by folks claiming to be a part of our RICO team. So that's the Regulated Industries Complaints Office, and claiming that these nurses owe fines and unpaid settlements, basically. Thankfully, because and immediately report them to us so that we could let everyone else know what to do when these meetings calls, and that's basically quickly hang up and in short. So verify, you can call the DCCA number or just let us know so we can report to RICO.
In the event that a person does have a legitimate complaint against them, how would they be notified about that?
That would be through a formal email, and I believe a hard copy letter is mailed out. Is that
Okay.
correct?
So if there's a legitimate complaint against a nurse, you're gonna look in your mailbox for that, not a phone call from some rando.
And an email.
And an email. Is this document posted to the board's website?
It's on DCCA.
It's on DCCA's website.
It was also released as a press release, and we had shared it out with all the partners and our organizations.
Great, perfect. Any questions or discussion from the board? Any testimony from the public on this agenda item?
No, during the public testimony.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that update, EO. All right, we'll move on then to our next agenda item, which is reports from Hawaii nursing organizations. We will begin with the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. Ooh, Director Reichardt wasn't ready. He's like, I'm supposed to be like 9 more minutes.
Yeah,
here.
it's 8 minutes in. Usually.
We're gonna be out of here in 12 seconds. Here we go.
Promises,
Pulling up the email that I wrote. No, it's not this one. Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Reichardt, and I am the director of the Hawaii State Center for Nursing.
No problem. Do you want me to skip to Denise? Okay.
I found it.
Okay, good.
I'm so sorry for not being prepared.
You were ready. It's fine.
No, that was so fast, you guys. You really do take like 20 minutes, and now it's 7. So just pulling up the email a little slow. The Center for Nursing updates on our managed priorities and activities. First, related to research, we have recently concluded fielding for our AY 25, so that's our 24-25 school year educational capacity report. We are also working on a nursing retention report, which is a snapshot from our 2025 workforce study. And as you all recall, because Joel helped us build that, he has over 50,000 responses. Really good data to draw from on the nursing to inform the nursing retention report. There will be a couple others, but those are the ones that are top on the docket. Quality practices and best outcomes. Nurse faculty across the state are in the process of completing their professional development funded by the state legislature and facilitated by us, the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. The training topics primarily focus on transition to practice support. So this is folks who are new to clinical faculty or new to didactic faculty roles. And we also have a lot of interest, particularly in this new to faculty role, in simulation education practices, which are a unique specialty within simulation. It is unique and it is applied to nursing education. So it's a great combination. We're happy to facilitate that education. Related to recruitment and retention, we have supported over 6,800 nurses through our residency, preceptor, and transition to specialty programs. We're currently working to expand these efforts. We have a rural health transformation funding to support this, and we will be through the Rural Health Transformation Grant, we will be expanding the support for clinical nurse educators and bedside nurses seeking specialty certification. So the whole premise, we had a lot of focus on new grads with our residencies, and we had specialty transition. And now thinking about how we can use these funds, we're going to make sure that clinical nurse educators are well positioned, have access to the most contemporary education strategies and content. And then we are also working to make sure that the whole unit is prepared to welcome new grads. We hear that a lot, like you have to balance the amount of new grads. Well, then let's put a little bit of more focus on the rest of the nurses in the unit to support that full team growth. And then for policy, in May, we released a request for information to support HCR, the HCR 105 report that the legislature tasked us with completing. During the legislative session, we held biweekly calls for nursing associations to talk through the legislative process and effort to increase, well, they just changed the term. The term was political astuteness, but a new report came out. They came out with a better term. I forget what it was. But that's the wrong term. Political astuteness is so clunky. So we had biweekly calls for nursing associations to talk through the political process and a weekly session to track one bill from start to finish. It didn't get sent to the governor's office, but it made it all the way through conference. And so we are investing quite a bit of efforts in engaging our nursing colleagues in being more nimble in this political advocacy space, because if it's your first rodeo, it's a hard one. It's really difficult. So we want to lend our expertise while not informing anybody's policy, helping people develop their own policy. So those are our updates today. If you have any questions.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
The number 6,800 that you cited for nurses through the residency, how many years is that?
So if that's our residency, our preceptor, and our transition to specialty programs, we are the first state in the nation to have a statewide nurse residency collaborative. So that started in 2012.
Okay.
We launched our preceptor training. We had some early on, and we're not counting those numbers actually, but we launched preceptor training in 2020. We launched specialty transition to practice for incumbent nurses in 2024. Yeah, so all of those, and it's cumulative numbers over time.
Great.
Other questions from the board? Anybody from the public wish to provide testimony on this agenda item? Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much, Director Reichart. We appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Up next, we have a report from the Hawaii American Nurses Association, Denise Cohen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, I sent in my report. I'm not really going to go over it, but I do want to talk about nursing as a profession. Since I wrote the report, as I put in the report, ANA is deploying a multi-pronged strategy. We do have bipartisan support in the federal government for including nursing as a profession in the USDOH. Also, there's a Democratic coalition that's also trying to get the rule overturned. And finally, this wasn't in my report, but this is brand new. ANA has filed a lawsuit along with 9 other nursing organizations, most notably the nurse anesthetist and the nurse midwives against the USDOH for this ruling. So that's where we are. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that we will be sending a delegation to ANA Assembly at the end of this month. We will be meeting with our congressional leaders from Hawaii, most notably to talk about this, the Medicaid, Medicare cuts, and other healthcare issues. And that's it, Carrie, sweet and to the point.
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate that update. Does any board member have questions about that? That I'm not surprised the nurse anesthetists are especially concerned about the DOH ruling or the DOE ruling because their education is expensive. So we would be very grateful for ongoing updates about how that's going. So thank you very much.
Both nurse midwives and nurse anesthetists are over 200,000 in.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Does any public member wish to provide testimony on Denise's report?
Testimony.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Denise. We appreciate you being here.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. All right, we'll move on then to our next agenda item, old business. Oh, and this is no truer description has ever been on an agenda to describe the continuing competency manual revisions than old business. EO, to you.
Sure. So this is the same version as the last meeting with the edits from the chair and the suggestions from our other board members. So just as a reminder, this is for people completing their renewals, their audits, or just their yearly, or they're restoring. All of that is combined in one document. So it goes into all the different, what is it called, learning activities they can do and how to submit it, what the document has to be. So this is the most up-to-date version. We're looking for any further board edits, if there are any, or potential approval of this draft. If it looks good, which is hopefully what happens. I also want to say thank you to the board chair. You really looked into this super deeply and got it as up to date and accurate as possible. So I think it's going to be a really good resource for.
I 100% agree. I think it is vastly improved and much more informative, especially with the documentation requirements. I think that was one of the most ambiguous things, both for nurses as well as the EOs who were responsible for determining whether or not a person's submission was compliant. So that's that. So I would like to open it to the board if you have any discussions or additional edits, comments.
Point of clarification, this is Bradley. So does this mean that because there are specific dates in here, we're gonna have to revisit this every 2 years?
I think it will force us EOS.
Okay.
Because things change, the board
Okay.
makes motions, and the concern before was if the applicant asks a specific question, oh, is a Florida Board of Nursing course approved? There have been times where it was and times where it wasn't, and it changes depending on the year. And
Okay.
what the most recent board motion was. So if we can compile all of that at least biennially into something that's up to date, I think that
Great.
helps.
That's fine. with
What would
me.
be your target timeframe for revisions on an ongoing basis?
I think it's similar to what we did this year. It kind of overlapped well. So right when the past renewals ended,
Right.
we had one ready as soon as the new biennial started.
I think that would work best.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
That's a good question. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from the board? Any public testimony on the continuing competency manual? So if there's no revisions, is there a motion to approve it?
This is Darren, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Jill.
That is a second on that motion. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. We have an approved revision of the continuing competency manual. Woo! Well done. Again, I just want to thank EO Stenardo for taking care of that. It has been a very, very long time. I have had this conversation with a total of 5 executive officers on revisions to this manual. And so we got it done and I'm very excited about that. So thank you for your effort on that activity. Woohoo!
So when can we expect to see this on the board website?
Oh, it's a good question.
We do it today.
He's like, yeah, I got an approval. I'm gonna go leave this
Answer.
meeting. Okay, awesome. That would be great. So nurses, look forward to that new document on the internet here in the next few days. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for that
That's
work.
a question related to that. When we do something like that, do we put any blast or email or anything out to let people know?
That document came out.
Updated documents are now
We have like a
available.
mailing list of our registered nurses, because if they gave us the email for the purpose of licensure, so we can't use it as like a newsletter type of thing. We're kind of limited in what we can.
I got you.
But isn't this the purpose of licensure?
But
Does DCCA have any social media venues?
Yeah, I can get in contact with the comms team.
And where I'm going with that is there have been some things that we changed, right? And so people are used to it being one way,
Right.
and all of a sudden it gets to be next May and they're like, oh crap, I didn't know
Maybe-
that this changed.
right, maybe what's worth doing is like the scam calls. We have some kind of notice that's like that. So at least we reach the people like the Hawaii State Center for Nursing, so they know it's available. Yeah.
Is the important announcement still on the website? Okay.
Also,
Go there.
Yeah. Okay.
I also want to add that nurses don't really worry about whether they're complying until it's usually.
Until they're
time.
submitting, they're on the audit list.
Yeah, then that's when
Yes,
they
when
will,
they complain, you could say, oh, but we noticed you, and these mechanisms last.
yeah, so that's when they will
They don't
usually
read
go on
emails either.
to the website or email us. To
Yes.
clarify, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the earlier we can drive nurses to the updated documentation, that would be better. So, to the way you say something, nurses, we very much appreciate your support in the dissemination of this information.
We comply.
Title,
Awesome.
any email communication, 50% off sale, aloha store. They will read that email.
Darren, if you can work that out. Awesome. Okay, any other discussion on the continuing competency manual? Marvelous. All right, well, we'll move on then to new business. We have a couple of scope of practice inquiries, so I'm gonna hand that back to the EOs.
So we have two scope of practice today. First one is from Mary Catherine Roberts, who's an RN. She's asking whether an RN can provide accelerated resolution therapy or ART therapy. She's specifically asking under the oversight of a PMHNP psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So she's looking for guidance from the board on this question. She's included a pretty robust document with her background and specific information, but I think the answer that would be helpful is if it's just a general for RNs doing that type of thing. So.
I'm gonna defer to the nurses on the board, because what do I know?
I'm deferred to PhD.
I know.
There's a psych and PD on the board, so, I'd love your
I've
thoughts.
honestly never heard of accelerated resolution therapy, so I don't feel like I can.
Bradley, what can you tell us?
I had to
Well-
look it up. I was like, what is this?
So I'm certified in ART.
Okay,
So that in my opinion, that requires independent decision making. While ART does have some protocol related to it, it is somewhat of a choose your own adventure, meaning if this happens, then you need to do this. If this happens, you should do this. But my concern is that if somebody is not independently licensed, like an APRN, a therapist, they can't just stop the session, because that could also have very negative
Adverse
consequences. Yes.
okay.
And so, with the oversight being done via a PMHNP, I don't think that qualifies for delegation,
Okay.
because this is a therapeutic approach that, if not done correctly, and if this person does not have the liberty to make shifts and changes in their approach in the moment, again, it can have some negative outcomes that are concerning.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that, because when I read sort of like what the deal is, I was like, this does not feel like an RN thing to me. And I was like, am I unclear as to what the therapy actually is? Because it does seem like you're providing, that'd be like a provider level thing to be doing. It's not like the same thing as administering a drug.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
Can Bradley, can a LCSW, like a therapist?
Yes,
They can perform it
that's correct.
if they're properly trained.
That's correct. Yeah. And they are master's level
Yeah.
providers, like independently licensed.
Right.
Okay, so discussion, board.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
this is the educator on the board, one of them. And we don't teach anything like this in nursing school. This is absolutely a post-grad certificate, and I would find it unusual for this to fall under the Nursing Practice Act, from what I know. I think I really agree with Bradley. Thank you for that insight, that this is a modality that is not, it's a medical modality, but not a nursing modality of treatment.
That's correct.
For a medical
Yeah.
procedure, I would like rate it therapeutic, basically.
Yeah. This is a cousin to EMDR. If you're familiar with EMDR, nurses don't do EMDR.
No.
What is CR for the non?
Oh, gosh. we
Eye
just say
movement.
EMDR. Yes.
Eye
Oh.
movement.
It's like rapid eye
Rapid eye
therapy.
movement.
Is that the one where I was watching an episode of Law and Order SVU and
Yes.
oh, got it, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so
Yeah, I would find this more under the therapist scope of practice versus a nursing scope of practice.
Oh, Sherry, thank you for saying that, because the other thing I was gonna say
Yeah.
is like, I would be surprised if an FNP were doing this, right? This to me seems like a very psych, mental health, very specifically psych
That's correct.
procedure. So I think I'd have concerns about an FNP doing this.
Yes, as would I.
Okay, good. Not crazy then.
Nope.
Well, it turns out I know a bunch of stuff. All right, any other discussion from the board? Any testimony from the public? Is the inquirer present, by the way? No, I don't see her here. No. Testimony from the public?
I think one other distinction that I want to make is that it's absolutely okay for RNs to do psychoeducation. But this is not psychoeducation.
Right,
Treatment.
okay,
It's treatment.
that's an
So
important.
that's another
It's not a
distinction.
nursing
that I want-
certification.
Right.
Okay, so EOs, the conversation is that, no, the board is generally consensus of the board is that it is not within the scope of practice for a registered nurse to do ART. Do you need a motion and a vote, or is the consensus sufficient?
I think that's enough. It's just a discussion-based answer to that person. So just so I can answer her better, as a nurse, the only way that she could do that is if she eventually became a PMHNP herself, and then she could do it.
That's correct.
Okay. There's no certification as an RN she could get that would give her the requisite training. No. Okay.
As, like, would you, as a PMHNP, you would never delegate this to an RN, right? No.
You cannot. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Agent, sorry, to the extent that this is a request for informal interpretation, maybe a vote might be
So
best.
we
Just
do like
to-
a positional
I
statement.
think just like affirming what
Oh,
Chair
okay.
just said, and then just so that it's memorialized by board action.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that the board determines that the board informally opines that ART, what is the actual words?
Accelerated resolution therapy.
Accelerated resolution therapy is not within the registered nursing scope of practice,
This is Bradley, I'll second.
period. Is there any discussion on that? Any board member wishing to vote no, recuse, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you, DHA, for that counsel. All right, EO, you're good on that? Okie dokie. Next item on the scope of practice.
I will take this one. So the board was asked to discuss the current regulatory framework as it pertains to graduate registered nurses and graduate practical nurses, PRNs and GPNs. And really more what their scope of work is, such as what functions can they perform under supervision while they're awaiting their NCLEX scores or waiting to take the NCLEX.
Point of clarification. This is post-graduation from an RN program. This is not a graduate RN, a graduate student RN.
Correct.
These are new graduate students from our nursing programs, for instance, and they're, they've registered to take the NCLEX, or they have already taken NCLEX, but they're awaiting their score or awaiting their licensure.
Where is the section on exemptions? So the additional backstory on this, right, is that the law changed.
Yes.
Laura Reichardt, please.
When SB 63 was passed into law that changed when SB passed into law, which changed the criteria for temporary nurse licensure from, it was just formerly in administrative rules, there's a small line in our state law, the whole law was changed. Part of that, incidentally, in the conference draft was that there was an exemption. And the exemption language exempted students or recent graduates who are waiting for their NCLEX. Back in the day, when it was like a paper press and it took months, it was very common to hire nurses kind of provisionally while they were waiting for their licensure. There are states across the nation, Texas comes to mind, that does have a graduate nurse provision, which is this kind of like donut. They're not in school, they don't have their license, but nurses are working class people, they need a job. So other states have the jurisdiction. The intention was not to remove the language because the whole process hadn't really been talked through, but it got incidentally removed during the conference draft. And so when we And we were addressing it during those 2 years. It was like 2024 and 2020, 23 and 24, 24 and 25. We did talk about it with our state partners. A lot of organizations will hire nurses into a non-nursing role, provisionally onboard them into their non-nursing tasks. That was a practice even when we had the exemption. But some facilities, they are really trying to secure the nurse recruitment so that they don't go to the mainland. So they're trying to expedite really favorable recruitment in a way that helps their organization, helps the nurse, helps the patients. And so I think it's getting brought back because organizations, and I haven't talked to them recently, this was about 6 or 8 months ago, but organizations feel kind of nervous hiring people. They want to make sure that they're very clear. The exemptions before were not great. There did need to be revisions to make it more aligned with contemporary practice. But the gray zone that we had with the previous version of the exemptions kind of got murkier with this being completely excluded, because, new grads will take a job to the mainland if they don't get an immediate offer today, in a condition, in a job that feels satisfying to them, like having an nurse job. So there's some pretty significant workforce planning, workforce management implications in this. But it was SB 63 is the bill, and I can look it up right now and give you the year.
It's 2024.
Thank you so much.
This is Sherry Shields Hansen. That is so true, because back in the day when we had to wait 2 months to get our license, they could hire us as a permittee, give us a permit, and we were able to give meds. We were able to give everything up until, except we were still under direct supervision by the agency. A lot of agencies quit that because they were hiring permittees and then they weren't passing NCLEX. So here they are. And so I think the language was trying to clean that up, but I don't feel the scope has changed. Doesn't it still allow hospitals to have like an extern program where they can allow these even still in school and graduates to still provide care? There's a few exceptions that they can't do, but has that changed the agency's ability to have those types of programs? That's my question. Maybe you can answer.
So the 457.13 provides exceptions for licensure, right? So 457.13.2 is the practice of nursing, which is incidental to their program of study by students enrolled in nursing education programs accredited by the board. So a student who's doing an internship or an externship or an apprenticeship or anything like that would be able to function in the roles that was deemed appropriate, like the nursing related tasks for that job. What that does not address is a person who is no longer enrolled in a nurse education program and that has hired.
Yeah.
Into a new grad role.
Which seems funny that they can do it in school, but now that they're graduated, and you said you're a great nurse, that they can't. Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, that was a good question. Darren, go ahead.
So if I can just add some context, I'm the product of the days where it was RNLP, when we had a paper and pencil exam that only got offered twice a year. So that was therein like the other issue, right? That computerized testing. It is a workforce barrier. The unions have played a part when Queens tried to do something like an extern program. The nursing union wanted them, and they said, well, we're not RNs yet. And then Teamsters wanted them because they were a lot of their specific roles aligned with that of like an assistant personnel, like a nursing assistant. The issue we've also questioned is how is it they can do more as a nursing student under indirect or direct instructor supervision, but we can't, a graduate nurse can't do that. The other issue is timeline, because if there's no sort of boundaries around how long can you be a licensed pending nurse, people may push that envelope as far as they can, be like, oh, I'll just do that for 8 months or whatever, right?
Yes.
Let me speak in support. I would love to see language that would allow us to hire graduate nurses to function in more of a nursing role, even if that included direct supervision for medication administration or anything involving controlled substances, because there's also a lot within a nursing scope of practice that a nursing assistant can do. And there's no reason a graduate nurse couldn't share an assignment with an RN that they could still provide, personal care and mobility and these kind of things. So I'd very much be in support of us finding some ways to do that, but there probably do need to be some guardrails in terms of time frame, what requires direct supervision versus what would not. Because what is happening for the folks that want to stay on island, if they can't get Queens will not hire you into an RN job if you do not pass.
Right.
So we tried it one summer for our student nurse interns. One summer, we guaranteed them a job. The next summer, there were all kinds of issues. Some people don't pass boards the first time around. Some people, there were just a variety of issues. We would like to find our way back to do that. Because again, there are a number of things that a graduate nurse can do without direct supervision and things they could do with direct supervision that they would do as a student. So.
Right.
The
So
operations impact is significant.
what I would like to do is drag this conversation back to the statute. So what I'm hearing, this conversation about workforce implications is super, super, super important. The problem is there's no language in our statute anywhere that creates a category of scope of practice for a graduate nurse. Yes, Bradley.
Can you help me understand then? 457-13-3. I'm confused by.
Oh, this is old. This is the
Oh.
language that was repealed.
Yeah.
We do. 457-13 currently. So emergency, anybody, it's practice of nursing incidental to the student, practice of a legally qualified nurse in another state, practice in connection with a healing of prayer spiritual means, administration of oral topical medication by school health assistants and any licensed provider in another state territory who's accompanying a patient from out of state for a short period of time. So that is exactly the language that created this problem, the removal of that language. So given the fact that there is no language anywhere in our statute that provides a category of practice for a graduate nurse, I'm gonna wait for the DAG to tell me I'm speaking out of turn here. We don't have anything to say about the scope of practice of a profession that we do not regulate. So the two things I think we can reasonably say are, one, they cannot practice nursing because they're not nurses. So anybody who's not a nurse cannot practice nursing. And two, they can be delegated to like unlicensed assisted personnel, right? So, and then beyond that, they can be delegated to by a registered nurse according to 457, like their unlicensed assisted personnel. Outside of that, it's up to the facility as to what they will permit this person to do in this bizarre role that doesn't actually have any regulatory parameters around it. DAG, tell me I'm wrong.
I concur. I think if we add any parameters, it wouldn't be supported by rule or law, especially since they took it out of, so it's not, there's no special status to a graduate nurse as far as I can see in a chapter. So I agree.
So basically, we have nothing to say on the matter.
Theoretically from that, and this is one of the reasons Queens will not hire somebody without a license, because they feel like there's no guidance for them to lean on if XYZ happens. We do have a student nurse intern program for people in the summer between their, what's typically junior and senior year. Right. If I'm hearing you correctly, Queens could also develop a graduate nurse intern program that could have the very same parameters as that, meaning direct supervision by a nurse when you're conducting RN functions like physical assessment, medication administration, specialty treatments, and that kind of thing. We could, same JD, different title. It's not a nurse until you pass, but
the board has no comment on anything that is not related to the practice of nursing.
in general.
Really, related to the licensing of nurses and licensed nurses. So if they're not a licensed nurse, we can't comment or provide any parameters around their work.
So really then it would come down to what is permissible by the facility.
Right.
Yes.
Risk, risk versus.
What risk are you willing to incur for that? But Darren, you made a really important point that I think weren't saying. The scope of practice of nursing is not exclusive to the practice of nursing, right? There are other professions, regulated and not, that can do a lot of the same things that nurses can do.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, if a healthcare facility is looking at the breadth of healthcare roles and you're like, how can I classify this person within my organization in a way that makes sense, given that they are an unregulated profession, based on what we're willing to do for other similar professions, they have a pathway to allowing these folks to practice within their organizations. But so Given the fact that they're not regulated by the Board of Nursing, what response formally does the board need to provide to this? I'm gonna ask the DAG that
Well,
question.
I mean, if I understand this inquiry correctly, like I know that this was in response to, I think, industry, like a
Yes.
common industry question, but
Correct.
I think for purposes of this agenda, I think this document, this inquiry was I think we are the EOs, you guys drafted this, right? So it's not, I don't think this is considered a typical request for like informal interpretation where we have to formally respond to like the prior person individual. So if no one asked us, it's just us trying to address an issue. So if the board would like, the board can like respond in any way by posting something on there, but there doesn't, based off of that, we don't need a formally, I mean, we don't need to issue a letter, but if we want to provide guidance, so to speak, we can do that through our website or something like that. I think a response, what you initially said is appropriate. It doesn't fall within the chapter or practice of, there's no special status. However, you know, we refer you to our laws on delegation, something broad like that, where we don't get too specific. To the extent that that's helpful to the public, if you guys believe so, you can direct, you know, the EOs to do that. But yeah, there's no specific obligation like the prior stuff to issue like a letter or something like that.
Okay.
So this is Bradley, my preference would be just to leave it in the minutes and not make any special announcement,
Can I ask why?
because the minutes are posted on the website.
I mean, that is a good and reasonable answer. Is there a reason you're opposed to a statement?
Well, just because our website doesn't need to get cluttered with
You're not
a
wrong.
bunch of information when we clearly just laid this out in the minutes.
Fair. That's fair. Okay, that's fair. Any other, okay, so thoughts from the board on whether we want to make a statement or let the discussion stand in the minutes?
This is Jill, I'll make a comment. If anybody knows how to use ChatGPT, you can find this like in like online through the minutes. So you can just Google, is this within Hawaii State, you know, like licensure, and you can find it easy. Just saying that.
Don't mess with the robots, but that's really good to know.
You just Google it and
You
it'll
can
come
just
up.
Google it and it'll
Yeah,
come up. So
yeah.
you can just Google it and it'll come up. Okay, so it wouldn't
You don't have to
necessarily.
look that hard.
Which is how they would find us anyway,
Correct.
right? Okay, all right. So yeah, Jill, what I'm interpreting that to mean is the minutes are sufficient. There is no need for a statement. Darren is nodding his head.
My thought is if we post something new or different, that might attract attention that we're not necessarily looking for, which then may require us to opine further. And so I think if it's in the minutes, that's.
Very practical excellence. That's,
So working with unions has taught me a lot of things.
I hear
Only
you.
give what's asked for and nothing more.
Oh,
Nobody asked for anything.
It's a very lawyer thing to say. I like it. Other comments from our board members on the virtual space? Sherry?
Yes. So I agree. I think it's short and sweet what Amy said. That's not our role, is to govern until they have a license or, you know, allow them to get a license. I think it's up to the agencies to determine what they're comfortable with in their graduate extern or internship programs. It's funny, California, you know, does a lot of this. So I was trying to find where in our statutes in California it allowed this, but I can see thank you so much, the graduate nurse and the student are two separate entities. So my long story short, I think we've done what we can do and we hear you, you know, we definitely hear you.
Any other comment from Terrence or Rebecca on the matter? That's head shaking over there. Any comment from the public? Testimony from the public on this matter? No public testimony. So we will just go ahead and the board's discussion will stand on the matter. Is there any clarification that the EOs need for, did we address the whole
Just
thing?
need something, because they ask all the time, we just need something to point to. So this can be what we point to.
Perfect.
Do you want them to answer every question?
Because we can't.
Right, and most of them are irrelevant, right? Okay. Outstanding. That was fun. Great job, guys. I lost my agenda. 1 second. Here we go. Scope of practice. All right, we are now on to a discussion of board discussion of LPN delegation. Okay.
So currently, Jill is our designated reviewer for LPN applications. And since she's terming out this month, we will need another board member to volunteer and step up to take on that responsibility.
If a board member declines to take that responsibility, every LPN application that the EOs do not have delegation authority over will end up as an agenda item for a meeting, just as an FYI.
And also, if it helps, we do not get that many LPN
I asked that
applications.
question.
Yeah, that's probably our
It's not
lowest.
many, mean.
Yeah.
How many in a year or how many in a month would you say
I'll have
average?
to look
Well,
back
I can
into it.
speak to what I
Yeah,
get,
there
and
you go.
that's probably about, at the most, 2 a month, at the most.
Okay.
Usually about one.
And then there's some months where Jill's never hear from either of us.
And so the process is they email it to you, you review, you then respond to, yes.
I just
okay.
say, okay to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
or
not.
Or let's discuss it, you know, with the
Yeah.
board, you know, yeah.
That, and then too, I think Warren's clarification for the record, for the board and the public, that's how the delegation works, right? EOs will be like, we don't have delegation authority over this application, sends it to the delegated board member. The board member will review. If the board member determines that there's no grounds or that the board is disinclined, would be very likely to be disinclined to condition or deny the license, then it just continues getting processed. If not, if the board member has any concerns, it gets escalated to the full board.
Yeah.
Is basically how that process works.
To have additional questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is additional questions. Sometimes you need additional information. All just gets kicked back. So that's the job.
And as a reminder, currently Carrie has delegated authority to review the RN applications and Bradley reviews the APRN applications.
And Sherry Shields Hansen has delegation over questions related to education specifically. So any board member wishing to volunteer to receive that delegation authority? I nominate Darren Dunbar. Okay, Darren Dunbar, I nominate you to take on the responsibility of LPN delegation. That's a motion. I move that Darren gets it.
Starting July 1st.
Seconds.
Beginning July 1st. Bradley seconds the motion. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse them? I'm sorry. Any public member want to provide testimony on this agenda item? Okay, so the motion is Darren, Bradley seconds. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Darren, thank you very much for your service to the board. Bless you, sir. All right, moving on then to discussion and possible action regarding review of credentials, evaluation reports with deficiencies. Can I take this one?
Yeah, but some of it, if possible, maybe executive session is.
Sure. Okay, so the basic nature of this one is it came about as a result of a conversation at our last education committee meeting. If a person is foreign educated, their job pursuant to our statute is to have their educational credentials evaluated by a board approved credentials evaluator. There are some cases in which we get credentials evaluations from companies that say, yes, this is equivalent to an accredited nursing education program, except for these very specific subject matter credit hour deficiencies. So like you're missing 13 hours of clinical education in maternal child health. And the chair of the education committee and I are not in agreement on whether or not that we have the statutory authority to take that kind of a report, that sort of like very specific deficiency, and determine that a person has not met the educational requirements for licensure. The chair of the ed committee would be like, well, if it's not equivalent to an education program, it's not equivalent to an education program, and we kick it and they just get deferred. My position is that that is not the case because our rules are not that specific. And so I have a hard time finding the statutory basis for us to say you haven't met the curricular requirements that are not actually that specifically explicated in our own rules. So that's the conversation before the board, is what is the reasonable parameters in which we can accommodate identified curricular deficiencies on a foreign credentials application is the backstory.
Sure. Did I hear you correctly to say that there are some companies who respond to this, but I also thought I heard you say we have selected companies to do that. So wouldn't one strategy be to stick to the selected companies only, and other people are not allowed to weigh in? They have to go through that?
We have 4 approvers. We have
Okay.
four credentials evaluators that the board has approved to receive reports from.
Okay.
I don't know. One of the problems that I have is that I cannot call to mind. Most of the time, the credentials evaluations reports that we're getting that have these curricular deficiencies are from True Merit, formerly CGFNS. And I don't know if that's because most people use CGFNS, so it's just a matter of statistical frequency, or because other credentials evaluators do not do that same kind of per subject matter missing credits thing. And one of the reservations I have about kicking back a report that has these like very specific curricular deficiencies is if it's not every evaluator is doing that, then if they would have sent their transcripts to another evaluator, they would not have they wouldn't have been dinged as deficient. And so that's one of the concerns that I have about that.
Reliability.
Exactly correct. So that's one of the concerns that I have. Yes.
Likewise, yeah, we would like to find out from these 4 evaluators what their baseline is.
Yes.
And to make sure that they're standardized against our rules and statutes.
I'm also not clear on what they're using as the basis for the accreditation, right? There's at least 2 companies, 2 accrediting bodies that I'm aware of that accredit baccalaureate programs. And if those 2 companies, if those 2 accrediting bodies do not have identical curricular requirements, or if they're using one or the other, I'm not sure how we reconcile like using one versus the other or whatever. So I think that's the other question that I have, that we had not had this reason to be this specific in asking those questions when we get requests for approval from these evaluators. That had never ever once crossed my mind, but now it definitely has. So that's sort of the issue before us. There are 5 applications on the agenda for the education committee meeting today that's sort of predicated on whether or not how we're gonna deal with these deficiencies. So there's that. So I don't know if the DAG has thoughts on whether or not we have the statutory authority to find a person deficient when our statute is not that specific.
Yeah, I mean, and I can maybe generally opine, but if we get too deep, I think an executive session might be appropriate.
Okay, so.
So I looked at the laws and rules on foreign jurisdiction. I agree that, generally speaking, the law is kind of, it requires the applicants to get it evaluated, and then so long as it's deemed sufficient by I think it refers to the rules, by the board's authority under its rules, then a license is granted. However, our rules are kind of vary, and it's a little broad on, I think there's a general rule under 1688 that mostly just prescribes the requirements on the applicant on what they need to provide to the board, but it doesn't speak as to it doesn't speak to the circumstances for deficiencies. And then the specific rules that follow for it's practical nurse and registered nurse. Also, it kind of just refers to the obligation to have it evaluated. I think the RN rule 1689 refers to I think this is the most detailed the criteria gets, is that, if the report indicates that it's the nursing program is comparable to an accredited nursing program without being qualified, which isn't necessarily there's no discretionary element to that. If so long as they find it equivalent or comparable. I think to this specific issue where there's different evaluators for the same comparable but I think there's a basis to defer, because to the extent that it's comparable, if they're saying that it's not, even they're saying yes, it's comparable, but
right,
it's short power, then it's not.
Right.
I think there's a legal basis to defer or to deny if they're not able to fulfill that. It's not as clear as in the rules, and maybe that's something that could be just in rulemaking.
Okay.
But I think generally speaking, I think there's a legal basis to defer them out of if they're the point of leaving it, that's it's not.
If you would be forced to say, but that's been our practice, if somebody doesn't meet that, do you respond that you don't meet that? And here's what you need to do, or just you don't. That's kind of what I want to talk about in executive session, if possible.
Okay. So we're actually to the point of the agenda where we'll be going into executive session to discuss applications anyway. So way to go on building an agenda, EO. So to that end, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to chapter 92 to confer with our attorney and discuss confidential matters and applications. Is there a second?
Sorry,
Yeah.
clarify for item 7C and item 8.
Yes, I can clarify that. In order for us to discuss item 7C and item 8, where there is confidential information, we want to consult with our attorney. Is there a second?
This is Bradley, I'll second.
Bradley seconds. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? There's no. Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. We are in executive session.
May vote for the.
Not exactly, we're gonna recess to go to. So when we come back, then we will call a recess. So we're back. Oh, yeah. Let's wind it up. Yeah. All right, so we're back. Are we back? Yay, great. Back. So going back, we actually went into executive session on the matter of agenda item number 7, which is related to board discussion possible action regarding review of financial evaluation reports with anything deficiencies. The board has discretion over applications that have deficiencies. The education committee will continue to assert its discretion over those applications. So this as the record carries that discussion. So to agenda item number 8, which is applications, I would like to make a motion to approve the ratification lists appended to the agenda for LPN, RN, APRN, APRN RX, and temporary permits. Is there a second? This is a second. Thank you for the second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Is there a motion related to the RN application for Lindsay Flores?
Yes, this is Jill. I make a motion to approve the RN application for Lindsay Flores.
Is there a second on that motion?
Sherry Shields Hanson.
Sherry
Second
Shields-
that motion. Yes.
Very much. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. I forgot to ask for public testimony on the matter of applications. Is there anybody who wishes to provide public testimony on the matter of applications? Is there a motion related to the application for Orange Swearingen?
Hi, this is Jill. In reference to Orange Swearingen RN application, I'll make a motion to approve with conditions upon passing the NCLEX or an RN refresher course.
This is Darren, I second.
Thank you for the second, Darren. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Marvelous. Thank you very much, board. Appreciate that. Agenda item number 9 is chapter 91, adjudicatory matters for which the board will go into recess. We are now recessed. Aaron, Bradley. Julie's clicking. Okay. We are back in open session. Thank you very much, everybody. So this is agenda item number 1. Pursuant to chapter 91, the adjudicatory matters, the board met in recess to discuss these 2 matters. The board voted unanimously to approve the settlement agreement and the board final order for Jennifer Elrod, and voted unanimously to approve the course revision, the substitution for Christine Pavlova. And that concludes the agenda item number 9. Next agenda item is number 10, which is announcement of our next meeting. It is scheduled currently for July 2nd. Does any board member expect to not be able to attend that meeting? We want to establish whether we have a quorum or not.
I thought I was going to be out of town, but I'm actually going to be in town, so I can come.
So you will be here.
I will be here.
Peachy. Yes, for July. Yes, exactly.
It does look like somebody has their hand raised.
Does look like are they an applicant? They're here. They're an applicant for education committee. Okay, so Shrung, we are going to have an education committee meeting immediately following this. Your application is on the agenda, so if you'd like to provide testimony on your application, the education committee meeting is where you would do that. So we definitely want to hear you, but you're just not on the agenda for the open meeting.
But if he wants to comment.
Yes. Oh, if you have testimony, is your testimony related to something other than your application, you can go ahead and leave your hand up and we'll bring you in. Okay, great. Thank you, TJ. I appreciate that. All right. So we're good. We expect to have a quorum in July, so we will meet in July. Magical. If that changes, if you know you cannot be here, please let the EOs know as soon as possible. And that concludes the agenda for the meeting. We are adjourned. Mahalo nui, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.